this is Baby Ready, and today we're talking about sibling preparation. You've had a child, you're loving this child, you're parenting this child, and you are giving it your all. And here's the thing. A lot of the content that I'm going to present today is going to be relevant, whether this is a child you are birthing, whether this is a child that your surrogate is birthing on your behalf, or whether this is a child that you're adopting. At this time, you are planning to expand your family with another child. And so that is the place that I'm coming from. I'm going to embed comments in the video throughout this entire episode, but I'm also going to put a link in the comments section to a handout that I give to expectant parents when they're planning on expanding their family, just about how to consider preparing your older child for a sibling's arrival. So one of the first things that I do is I encourage you to write a little note. And the note might read something like this. Welcome to our home, and we look forward to you meeting our new baby. First and foremost, please take a moment to speak with our older child. Ask them to introduce you to the baby. It can sometimes help by reminding the people who have loved your older child for however long they've been a part of your family, who have gushed over them and fawned over them and brought gifts to them. It can sometimes be helpful to remind them that the baby doesn't even know that they're there to visit, but the older child does. And if they come into the house and are open arms for the baby and ignore the older child, then sometimes the older child starts to feel resentment because they don't understand why things are changing like that. And I 150% know and understand and respect that the people coming to meet the baby are just excited for you and how your family's grown and expanded. But sometimes they forget to pause and to think about the way that that may feel to the older child. As much as all of us love getting gifts, it can be helpful if we let the older child open the gifts for us. After a time, they're probably going to get a little bit bored of opening baby gifts. Oh, this is another outfit. Oh, this is another rattle. But by involving them in the process, when they already love opening presents, helps to make them feel like they're a part of the process and excited about the journey that's unfolding for all of you. It may be helpful and beneficial to you to have a few gifts wrapped up or in a special place, that if you have a guest arrive and bring something for the baby but not something for the toddler or the older child, then have a gift that they can open for themselves that makes them feel special about, now everybody's getting presents when the baby comes. And I don't mean that if you have a 15-year-old and now you're having another child that maybe you want to make sure they get a new gift every time that a baby present's brought into the house. But I'm thinking more about the fact that if you have a 2 or a 3 or a 4-year-old, they don't understand. They've always been the one getting gifts. So why aren't they getting gifts now? What makes baby special? Because for them at this point, it just makes them feel like they're not special. So I'm not trying to bribe them. I'm not trying to coerce them. I'm not trying to make them think that every time someone comes through the door, they're going to get a gift. But it is important to try and flip the lens and see the world a little bit through their perspective and their eyes. People ask me about when's a good time to transition their older child out of the crib because the baby's going to need to use it. And I encourage you to spend some time really thinking about when you want to make some transitional things happen. It is a good idea, if they've been a great crib sleeper, to transition them out of the crib either well before their sibling arrives or well after their sibling arrives. The baby may be in a bassinet for quite some time, so it can be helpful to leave them in the crib when the baby first arrives, because that gives them the opportunity to feel like they too are the baby. And sometimes babies seem to be getting all of the attention, and so they really truly want to be a baby themselves, and some of their behaviors will revert, and I'll go into that in just a moment. But up to that, as the baby's coming and you're thinking about making changes like switching daycares or taking them out of the crib, do consciously give some thought to whether or not it's a good idea to do that, either, as I say, well before the new baby arrives, so that there's a time that the crib is completely empty and that the baby's not taking their space, or do it after the baby's arrived and give them the opportunity to have the buildup of knowing that this big transition is coming. But I encourage you to not have one child leave the crib and another child immediately come into it, because it can feel a little bit like one's being shafted or shifted to the side. Making changes to daycares and things like that can sometimes be a bit challenging if you do it just before or just after the baby arrives, because they're already adapting to a new schedule, a new lifestyle, a new way that the family functions. And so it can feel overwhelming for them. So my thought for you is, if you're thinking about changing daycares or things like that, kind of give it some thought to try and do it well in advance of the baby coming again, or well after the baby's arrived. Lots of new parents like the idea of having that continuity and the consistency of the older child still being in care at least a day or two a week during the parental leave. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It gives them the opportunity to play with peers and interact with other people, but it can be challenging to do that in a new space. So if that's something you're thinking about, you're going to be off on parental leave for a while, you're looking at childcare that's closer to home or that has a bit more flexibility to it, try looking at that well in advance of baby being born, if that's at all possible, to give your older child time to settle in there before things kind of flip upside down at home. That said, you may notice that behaviors regress when the baby comes. It's not surprising to see a toddler that was fully toilet trained and using the toilet whenever they needed to without a lot of prompting, to suddenly revert to wetting or soiling their pants. And it is just that there's so much going on. They're not doing it to frustrate you. They're not doing it to upset you. And a lot of times they're not even conscious that they're doing it. So it's not that they're doing it to get your attention, but really mostly that what they're doing is they're just processing all of the change. And so things like feeling when I need to go to the washroom just don't necessarily happen as easily. And so I encourage you to have no reaction whatsoever. Oh, your pants are wet, let's get you changed. And that's kind of the end of the conversation. Try not to remind them that big boys or big girls go to the bathroom on the toilet while babies use diapers and that kind of thing. It is advantageous sometimes when they're talking about foods and things like that to remind them that they like to eat pizza and they can eat pizza or pasta or whatever the food is, and baby doesn't get to have that. So highlight some of the things that they do get to have. But if they want to taste what your human milk tastes like, or they want to taste what baby food tastes like and see what the baby's getting, then let them have it. It's not going to hurt them, but it does help them feel as though baby gets special things that they don't get. It's just trying to meet them where they are and their developmental understanding of place within the family, place within the world. It is just honoring and respecting them. This next one can be a little bit funny for some people, but it's really important to let your older child touch or hold the baby whenever they want. It is equally important for them to know that there are safe times and spaces for them to hold the baby and touch the baby, and that it's not a good idea for them to lift up the baby, just as you would tell them not to lift up the dog or the cat or another human being. But they want to be part of this baby's life. And so try to remember that, even if you're in the middle of doing something else, if they're really gung-ho on holding the baby, they feel like they're helping and they feel like they're bonding with baby, just as you like to have those opportunities too. So do try to facilitate that. Remind them that they need to get in the right spot, sit on the sofa or sit on the armchair with armrests on it to give them some support on the sides. Get your pillow in place so that you can hold the baby on your lap, that kind of thing. You'll see them sometimes just going and getting into position as if you're supposed to just know once they've assumed the position, that's the time that you're supposed to place baby in their arms. And they love it. They truly, truly love it. I strongly encourage you to really make every effort to make sure that baby's not the excuse for things. And by that I mean, if your older child wants you to read a book, or wants you to come and play, or wants you to make them a snack, or wants you to do something else, try not to blame the reason that you can't on the baby. Try to find different ways to say it. I'd really like to read you a book right now. I'm just in the middle of something else, so why don't you bring the book to me? Because let's read that book together up here on the sofa. Or I'll get to your snack in just a moment, but I can't do it just right now. They may see that the baby is taking up some of your time at that moment, and that's why they're not being able to get what they're looking for. But when you don't use the baby as an excuse, then they don't necessarily use the baby as an excuse. It's funny, I remember distinctly, my kids and I were in the car on their way home from somewhere, and we rarely ever stopped for fast food treats in any way. But my older child had behaved so beautifully and had asked me if we could please stop and get some French fries on the way home so that he could eat them in the car, and I was happy to say yes. He'd been so well behaved. We'd had such a great trip. He'd been in the car for over an hour already. He asked, I said yes. And so as we pulled into the fast food establishment to get the French fries, he asked if we could go inside. And again, it wasn't something that we normally did, so I normally would have said yes in those situations because it was different, it was unique, it was fun, it was going to be different for him. But my youngest child was sleeping, and so I said, you know, hon, I really can't, because your brother just fell asleep. I really need him to sleep. We still have a ways to go to get home. So I think we're just going to do drive-through today. Is that okay? And he got really sad and he said, you know, Mommy, I just wish Quinny wasn't here. And that was the first time. His brother was about 6 or 7 months old at the time. And that was the first time that he'd said he didn't want his brother there. And I panicked. What do you mean? You don't want your brother? What's wrong with your brother? I thought you loved your brother. And it was very reassuring for me. It's, no, Mommy. I love Quinny. I love that he's here. But I just want to go inside. And if Quinny wasn't with us today, we could go inside the restaurant to have our French fries. So, you know, it happens. It'll break your heart when you hear the words, whether they mean that they wish you'd never had the baby or whether they just mean that they wish the baby wasn't with you at the time. But it happens, and they're going to feel a separation and a split from the time that they had with you before. And that's okay to honor that and respect that, because when he said that, that gave us an opportunity to talk about it further. Don't get me wrong, he was a very articulate 3-year-old, so he was able to voice his opinions and thoughts very clearly. They forget that they were babies themselves, and so it can sometimes be helpful to pull out their baby book or pull up your phone and scroll through and find the pictures of when they were an infant and remind them how they didn't used to be able to sit by themselves, they didn't used to be able to get around by themselves, they didn't used to be able to source food by themselves, because sometimes that can help them feel why the baby needs so much from you so much of the time. Take your toddler or older child with you to your care appointments so that they can hear the baby's heart rate and they can hear that there's a baby inside. Make sure you talk about this being your baby together as a family. This isn't your baby as an individual, but together we're having a baby, and they feel proud and boastful about it instead of separated. This one was a big one for me because for a long time I thought I might be having a home birth. And even if I wasn't, I knew that I would likely be laboring at home for a period of time. So it was worrying to me that some of the sounds that I might make during labor would be frightening to my child, to my older child. What if this was happening at 3 a.m. and somehow it woke them up and now they were awake and they were hearing that I was making strange and scary sounds? So we made a game out of it. We used to make dinosaur sounds and roaring sounds and grunting sounds and moaning sounds, and we would see who could make them the funniest and the loudest and the scariest and everything else. But we made a game out of it. And I made a comment to him on a regular basis about how I was making these noises now and might make these noises when I was having a baby, because it's hard work to get a baby out of my body, and really tried to engage him on that level, so that if he woke up and he heard me making sounds that sounded like something was hurting me, he would know that it wasn't the baby that was hurting me, because he was so protective of me. He didn't want me to be hurt, and so I didn't want him to think that the baby was hurting me in any way. To that end, if you're having your baby outside of the home, even if you are planning to labor at home for an extended period of time, it's really important to make sure that there's a couple of conversations well in advance about the fact that you're going to need to be away from them for a period of time, that they may not be able to visit you in the hospital, and that they may not see you after you've left to go to the hospital to have the baby for a couple of days. Make sure, if they've never had a sleepover somewhere else and that they're going to be sleeping away from you, that they do that once or twice with whomever it is that's likely to be caring for them while you're in labor. Are they going to Granny and Granddad's? Are they going to your siblings? Are they going to your best friend's house? Are they going to their best friend's house? Then make sure that they've had a sleepover or two before labor actually unfolds, so that you have a couple of dry runs to see how they cope without you being there. If they're staying in your house and someone's coming in to care for them, then get yourself out for a night or two a couple of times before the baby's born. That's a gift to you and a gift to your child, with helping them adjust to what that dynamic might look like if they've never had the opportunity to be away from you for a night before. Remind your child that the baby's going to need a special outfit to come home from the hospital, and maybe let them pick it out. Get them involved and help him pick names for your baby, and see what they think about the names you've chosen. And if there's a special gift that they've been really having their eye on, they really want that new Paw Patrol or whatever it is that's big at the time, then maybe that's a gift that they can get from baby the first time that they meet the baby. Remind your child over and over again that you have enough love for everyone, that just because you're growing your family doesn't mean that you're going to have less love. It just happens that when you grow your family, you grow your heart too, and the space within your heart that cares for them will also grow to include caring for baby, but it won't change how much they love and adore you. This last one that I want to mention before I talk about some books is, I find, probably the most important piece for you to remember. This is your baby. Your toddler or older child didn't ask for a baby, and even if they did, they didn't know what they were asking for. So if they want to get you diapers, if they want to get you a new shirt, if they want to get you a cloth, if they want to get you a toy, if they want to do things for the baby, fabulous. But if they say no, don't make them feel badly. Can you get mommy a diaper? No, I'm doing this. I don't want to. Okay, this is your baby. You chose to take on this role, and while I know that you're excited about it, and truthfully, I think your older child will be pretty excited too, it's not where they are. And so it's okay if they don't feel that that's the thing that they want to do. It's really okay to just have them be as involved as they want to be and as uninvolved as they want to be. It's part of the dynamic of them adjusting to learning what the dynamics in the house are going to look like and feel like and be like. And I know that you love your older child just as much as you love this new one that's coming. So I know you'll honor and respect them. Sometimes the things that I'm talking about are things that we didn't even think to consider. But as I say, I'm going to post a page that I print out and I give to expectant families when there's a sibling coming, and you have access to that via my website. So the link for it will be in the comment section, and it'll be hyperlinked to my website. What's coming next right now is just a list of books that I really loved when my kids were little. The first and the most amazing was Siblings Without Rivalry by Adele Faber and Elaine Maslish. And I don't even know if it's still in print, but this book was outstanding, phenomenal, amazing for me. I read it, and the clarity I got when I read it while I was expecting my second was profound. I found that the whole book came with this feeling like, well, just imagine your partner comes home from work one day and says, honey, you know what? I love you so much. I want another spouse just like you. Well, I know how most of us would react. We'd stand on the front porch with a shotgun in our hands going, bring them on. And we'd want to protect what we already have. And that's sort of where Siblings Without Rivalry started from for me. And it just grew from there. And it helped me to understand the dynamics of how I wanted my children to interact. And I'm going to tell you something now. My children are grown adults, and they are so close. They really are good friends as well as siblings. I have watched my children as they grew up, and people used to say to me, oh, they don't fight now, but you just wait until they're 2 or they're 4 or they're 12 or yes, they live in the same house, and any two people who live in the same house are going to bicker back and forth, but they never really fought. They weren't kids who just antagonized one another willfully to make the other person angry. It just wasn't how they unfolded their relationship. But I truly always give credit to them. That's their personalities. I can't speak to it being something that I did. I do just think that that's who they are. But it can happen that kids actually grow up liking one another as siblings. Anyway, here's the list of the books that I like. Martha Alexander wrote a book titled Nobody Asked Me If I Wanted a Baby Sister. Lindsay Camp wrote The Biggest Bed in the World. And this one is one that I truly love for those families who are co-sleeping or bed sharing, because it can feel very cozy and warm, and it's just fun. Dorothy Corey wrote a book titled Will There Be a Lap for Me? One of the things I love about this book is just the idea that it addresses that worry that if there's a new baby coming, will my parents still love me as much as they always have? Jenny Overend wrote a book, Welcome with Love. Alison Lohans wrote Waiting for the Sun. William and Martha Sears are gurus in the parenting world. He's a pediatrician. She's a pediatric RN. They have several children of their own. Their children have gone on to be pediatricians, and they just have such respect for parents. And one of the books that I absolutely love is just titled The Baby Book. And it probably seems old and archaic now because it's an actual paper book, although I'm sure you can get a digital copy somewhere. And the premise of the book is not a sit down and read front to back, this is how you parent, but it's more of a reference book. So if you're looking about how to help your baby through colic, or how to do a diaper change, or what a diaper rash looks like, or burping your baby, or feeding from your body, or whatever the topic is, there's a section in there that talks about it. And you can just simply flip to that section and find it and read it and absorb it, and then on you go in your parenting journey. But together with Christy Watts Kelly, they wrote a book titled Baby on the Way, and it's a pretty great read. They also together, just William and Martha Sears, wrote What Baby Needs, and it's another excellent reference book. So these are some books that you can probably find at your local library. You can find on any online bookshop store. But do see what you can find some books, even something simple like the Franklin series and the Berenstain Bears. They have new babies coming into the family, and they talk about the dynamics of how that's going to feel for the older child. So sometimes some of those familiar faces in books are great reads for the older child as well. In any case, I hope I've offered some help. If you've got some specific questions about what life might look like when your baby is introduced to the family, then please don't hesitate to reach out to me. You can always email me, babyreadylgbtq@gmail.com. You can visit the website and leave a comment on the submission page, www.babyready.info, or please leave a comment here. I will get back to you. I will answer the comments, and I will answer the questions. And I just want to make sure that this is a smooth transition for all of you. Have a wonderful day. We'll talk soon. I've added a couple of other videos to this list that are not on the sibling preparation handout. And the primary reason for that is I'm sure that you've noticed as you go through the list that the majority of the books that are listed are from when I was parenting my own children many years ago, and they were quite small. And the collection of LGBTQ plus books and families depicted in children's books was very small. And so I threw in a couple of extra books that I think are fantastic, that kids love to read regardless of the dynamic of their family, and ones that I hope may reflect more the way your family looks. So here's a few more, and we'll talk soon. Thanks.